Do you have a spiritual ego? But is that ego stopping you progressing? Is it stopping you developing? Is it even potentially stopping us all ascending? So today on the Shifting Realities podcast, myself, Julie, and my friend Rob want to explore what it means to have a spiritual ego, what all of this is about. I'm going to start off by saying, for me, it feels like there's almost like two ends of the spectrum of a spiritual ego, but then there's all the bits in between. So one end of the spectrum is when you might see somebody with a spiritual ego who has been working for many years in the spiritual world or has been born with spiritual gifts. But you'll see them today, and it feels like it's creating almost like I'm a superior being. I have been this, I have done that, and I therefore am more superior to you. And then you've got the other extreme of somebody who may not have been doing it for very long, may have only just started waking up to understanding some of their spirituality, to understanding they are an intuitive being, because to me we are all intuitive. But then on this spectrum we may have the doubting Thomas and we may not may doubt what we're getting, and then therefore we try and we seek somebody who can help us. Now, in my point of view, it is all about helping us seek out that's the humanness in us. Last week we talked about unity. It is trying to seek out others that can help us explore what we're getting. However, are we going to go to those if we've not been able to discern too much? Are we going to go to those people or watch people on YouTube or read books where there may be some limitations to this? So for instance, with this I have experience of both. I have, and currently I'm experiencing being in memberships where you have these wonderful people who've had all this experience and are just relaying their experience, and they can, they're healing people, and it's a wonderful thing. And so I desperately, in my humanness, I seek to learn more. My spiritual ego allows me to continually learn. But is there something around somebody who's so complacent that they don't, they feel that they don't need to learn anymore, that they just want to retire from it, or just when they get the odd signs from the guides, they'll just work on it then? Or should we be continuing to strive to learn more to help us ascend? What do you think about this, Rob?
There is no end to this process.
Yes.
So let's never bring limitation on spiritual
Mm,
development or
mm,
ascension. Let's just call it ascension. But back to ego.
mm,
Ego exists. There's nothing you can do about it. Ego is necessary. It's part of our existence. And we say spiritual ego, there is just ego.
yeah.
Ego is not a tangible physical thing. It's ego. It's spiritual anyway. But it seems to come into play really strongly in the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
Certainly currently where we're at in this day and age, when there is a lot of new thinking and a lot of platforms to put that new thinking out.
Mm, mm,
And it's easy enough, I think, to spot people who have spiritual ego, if we want to use it in the term of, as you said just a little while ago, I've done all this work and I'm now superior to you, so I'm going to relay it from the top of my lofty heights, and
mm,
you may follow me if you wish,
mm.
which is desperately patronizing.
It feels almost like, Rob,
That's, yeah,
follow me because I'm right. It feels like that.
well, exactly. And that person will very probably feel they are right.
Mm,
That's okay. That's their ego. But why do they have that ego? And why is their ego playing that particular message in their mind? And I think if we remember that the ego is the link between ourselves and this life and our spiritual life. It's the conduit between the two that links them. And there's a whole lot of protection mechanism going in there. So it's very easy for the ego to say, you've learned all this, amalgamate that and don't go any further. But then you have to ask, is that the ego? Is that you? Is that your mind saying that? What's the ego doing and what is your mind doing? So if the ego wants to protect me from perhaps going too far, perhaps I'm not ready to go much further, perhaps it triggers my mind into saying, that's enough now. Stop. I've learned this wonderful modality and I'm just going to share it with the world, and I'm never going to grow. Anybody who responds to that can go back and listen to our podcast on growing your modality and never letting it stagnate. So the ego gets a bad rap. We use it in our language that, oh, it's such an egotist, big ego he's got. But your ego is really, really critical to keep you sane and together. So embrace your ego and learn to love your ego and have conversations with your ego, as many of us started out doing years ago, and find the balance of what is ego and what is mind. And just relax into it. Your ego will never stop you progressing unless you want it to, unless your mind fears something. And then there's the work to do of why do you fear? And the clearing that you and I would do with clients is to, let's get rid of that wound. Let's heal that. Let's lose those ties and those strings and allow you to flourish and free up your ego to go forward. You and I have an ego. We do this podcast.
Yes.
We wouldn't be able to do it without an ego, but we don't do it to be egotistical. We don't do it to pronounce and dictate and sort of, get smug that look where we are and look where you are, poor things. We do it because we believe we have a message. We believe we are directed to do it. We really, really want people to just get on board and find their own truth, find their own authenticity. That was a mouthful, Julie. What do you think?
Absolutely, that's brilliant, Rob.
Yeah.
No, added to that, yeah, that's where the sort of what somebody might say at the lower end of the spectrum, and it isn't, but where you've got the people coming in, and obviously they may come to us or they may go to somebody else, but where you've got this, the doubting, where you doubt yourself, where you are at that comparing yourself to others. Am I good enough? Am I getting the right answers to that? And what I want to say is, you are equally, you might be getting those right answers, and that might be you getting an answers over and above what somebody else might get. You might be getting guides that are far, far, in advance and from the higher dimensions than somebody else. And I think that's why we've got to be, it's about preparing ourselves to understand that it's not just about, and here's where somebody might trigger, but where we're not just speaking to some relative or something like that, that we're starting to go into the higher dimensions because we have done a lot of the work, and so we are growing. But if we keep choosing with our ego that we are not good enough, we are not as good as the next person, that's sort of, where I feel like, honestly, when I've seen clients really doubting what their abilities are, my ego gets frustrated because I say, gosh, keep bringing it out. And the other side to this is, we are still, there's so much of this spiritual ego that works in what I would class the one divide that I feel, which there shouldn't be a divide, there should all be unity, but a divide that I feel that there is the new age spiritual community, as opposed to where I feel like myself and Rob and some of my friends are, is the new earth. And that's just talking about a new frequency, the new superhuman part of us that is coming through to us. So we're talking about ascension, but what this really means to me, with my ego, is that we're being humble and understanding that all we're doing is learning about all the different aspects of ourselves. And to me, there's no limitation. If you look at, all our aspects of ourselves within the universe, absolutely no limitation to this. And so, some of us will be, you may have only been working for a year or so, but it's because something activated in you, it woke you up into unveiling all the things that you possibly can be. And this is where I also do observe people who've been doing this work, as we've just been saying, somebody who might be doing this work for decades and decades, are still working what feels like in the lower realms, and feels like they haven't done, say, for instance, the clearing work. So Rob and I constantly talk about going within to do the clearing work, and you don't have to do this on your own, but you can do. When you do the clearing work, this helps you discern more. This helps you to grow your intuitive gifts, because it helps you to look at what might be in our, in humanness, what might be right or wrong, or what might be light and dark, and all is good. Nothing is in fear, but what might be allowing somebody who hasn't done the work, whether you knew or whether you've done it for so long, if your spiritual ego is of such that not allowing you to go to do this work and face some things, what happens here is we like the new age stuff, which is more like, sometimes it feels like you want to be in like a fairyland, like like the like a kind of Disneyland type world of everything's love and light, and I'm going to start channeling. But what might happen is, with your ego here, you might start channeling something that isn't telling you what you should be doing, how to ascend and how to grow and how to clean up that act. And you again, especially in the last few years, more and more of the things that are stopping us, the things, the beings, the AI, and this is not about not working with AI. There's just certain aspects of things that are being programmed into us, and we're not. This is not for this. I'm not wanting to put any fear in us, but it's just about stopping ourselves finding people or working with people or looking at YouTube information that doesn't feel right, that just is where we might think we're talking to a particular guide and we're not. And this is where Rob and I just absolutely want you to, to do this really deep work of going within to understand your own spiritual ego. And does that spiritual ego need a little bit of work on it or cleaning on it, to to understand that you're not, that you don't have to doubt yourself, and at the other end of the spectrum, that you don't have to be so complacent that you don't feel you need to do any more work on anything, that you know everything and you've got this one guide who's going to tell you everything. Because for me, Rob, I don't know if I think you're the same, and you've worked with me as a client before, but I love the fact that you just flew, you just grew and grew and grew. But I've also seen in other, in other people who are, particularly who I've looked into working with, who seem to create that limitation, that they only do work with certain guides or in a certain way. And I think we've just, that's what we've got to kind of like cut the ties on and understand as we increase our frequency. So if we're looking at the new earth and our frequencies are increasing, and that's not just the ones that are doing the work, that is in all humans at the moment. It might be in all humans who don't want to go to, who don't want to learn lessons, and who just keep going round in circles in their false karma. That's fine, that's absolutely fine, it's part of our contract maybe. But you will notice time is speeding up, the frequencies are speeding up, and you may feel different in your bodies. I think even in the physical aspect, food and all sorts of things, you're just not able to eat, and we're getting more allergies. And that's just a sign. That's nothing wrong with us. That is just a sign that we are expanding. But then what we've got to do as a human is start understanding ourselves more. So again, coming into the spiritual ego, we have got to start allowing that ego to grow, and not stop that poor ego from finding out every aspect of us, the multidimensional self of us. Have you got anything else to say on that, Rob? I think I've gone off. As usual, I go off on
You're
one.
done, Julie.
Go
I
off on
think
it.
it's important, on many things I could pick up in what you've just said. in terms of the guides, New Age thinking was that you had a spirit guide. Pretty much when I started this journey,
Yes.
it was you're going to be lucky if you connect with your spirit guide, and you would do all sorts of little meditations and hope that your spirit guide was going to be dwelling in a
Yes.
forest glen and have a chat with you.
And call Bob.
And
Call Bob.
yeah, absolutely, whatever. But that isn't the case at all. There are myriads of people out there. I've just given up and just call it my team in spirit.
Yes. Yes.
Because I do have constants in my guide sort of array, but new people come in all the time.
Yes. Absolutely.
And usually by surprise, and you're sort of in the middle of a process of connection, you go, who are you? What?
Yes.
What do you want?
Do your discernment.
You
Yes.
realize, and they might not hang around for long,
Yeah.
but they might.
Absolutely.
It's there's a team out there that understands your growth.
Yes.
And there's
Your
a whole lot of
family.
people waiting for their turn to come in and step in and give you your next download, your next development, your next leadership. Always remember that the guides are guides. They are not nannies.
Yeah.
So we don't develop connection with guides and then abrogate our responsibility to them, because we are responsible. They're just there to help us. And I've had guides leave, and I'm fairly sure it's because I haven't been utilizing their knowledge.
Same here.
Yeah. See,
Because of your
they will
spiritual
hang
ego.
around. Yeah, absolutely. And they have
I
huge
can't do
patience.
this.
Yeah. It's also key to remember that guides are beings too, and they have egos too. And just as you exist on multiple levels right now, and you can choose which one of you want to be, all those yous have an ego. So it's like looking at one of those old dressing room mirrors. Do you remember those dressing table mirrors?
Yes.
You've got a mirror in front of you, you've got the two flaps on the side, and
Yes.
if you catch it at the right angle, there's hundreds of reflections of you.
Absolutely.
So that's your reality. You can look at all those versions of you and look over those shoulders and look at all the egos of you over those shoulders. So the only way to deal with your ego is to be authentic. It's that great old word, authenticity.
Yes. Yes.
Retreat back into yourself, and retreat is not going backwards. It's just pulling back and resetting, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Give yourself time to do that. Allow yourself the luxury of doing that. Be open to what messages come through. I mean, I had a message today I told you about a little earlier that took me completely by surprise. And now I realize I have a chunk of work to do to sort that one out.
You do, yeah.
So these things will happen. And the more you work, I think the more you will understand what is ego, what is mind, and what may be impacting on those two and their relationship. And their relationship is really, really key in all of this.
Yeah.
Is how does your ego talk to your mind, and how does your mind talk back to your ego, and what do they relate to you and to your essence? Is that conversation retarding your progress, or is that conversation aiding your progress? And you want to be aiming for the one that aids your progress and helps you forward. So you need your ego and your mind to be mature, grown-up people on their own, to have their own conversations, to share the conversations with you, so that you all have a sort of symbiotic trust together. And that you get when you're authentic. It just happens authentically, because you're not pretending to be something you are or aren't. And the minute you start that, well, you've got work to do.
Yes, definitely.
There can be no pretense in this game at all, because it will be seen through immediately by people at a higher level, by guides, by spirit generally, and by people around you who are attracted to you, and then will go, that's not authentic.
Yes, exactly.
And will fall away.
Yeah, it comes, just reminded me of something, and this is, again, there's no right and wrong in this, and who am I to say? However, this is what I feel like I need to share, is that when you also get messages from the guides, I notice with a lot of people with their egos, if they work in the public domain, so if they're online aiming to get clients, that's good. We need to be promoting ourselves. But what will happen is, like Rob's just said, this morning he'll get something completely new to try and interpret. And with our ego, with our spiritual ego, we'll be able to interpret based on our perception of what we know at this moment in time. So where somebody, if we haven't been doing the work and we don't know enough, let's say, will interpret it to be, it could potentially, if you've only had that information, that download this morning, you could be interpreting it in some different way. So for instance, I've seen a lot of people online in the public, in the public domain, saying, I had this download over the weekend or yesterday. I am, or I was ISIS. I am ISIS, and I now have this channeling to say, and I have this message for you all. And this is not, please understand, this is not me, being humorous about it, but it's me being worried about it that, are you absolutely sure that was what that you needed to interpret? Or is it just a case of there's some consciousness you've gone into that is part of ISIS, or the ISIS consciousness, or something that's allowing you to be able to give the message to people, but is it possible that it's not you as a soul that was ISIS in a past life, or is a part of you as ISIS, but it's just some key to a download that you've got? Because if you think about it, if we think about our ego, and if you think about soul, because you see it a lot, I'm just picking on ISIS because it was one that was a little while ago, that everybody suddenly came out, and what you see there is, because it's in the collective, it's just more that you're getting that consciousness that needs to come and allow people to understand the good, bad, the good, bad, and the ugly, and all that goes with it. That maybe you just need to just sit back a bit with ego. Just sit back and go internally, and actually, what is it telling you, rather than your ego going, I need to explain this, this is me with a big ego saying, look at me, I'm far superior to you, when ISIS could potentially be a download for every single person on the planet anyway, if we put our minds to it, just as one example. And that's just all I'm going to do here. Is that this is not, I don't want it to be my ego, but to just explain what might happen when you get downloads. Because if you think about, has every soul, or many souls who've said they've been ISIS, could many souls actually be ISIS? I don't, to me, I don't think so. And the other one is, getting something like Archangel Michael gave me a message for you as an individual, and I need to give you this message. And that, again, please just watch what's happening there, because I'm not saying there's no archangels, but Rob and I were saying earlier with some of the guides, do they all have time to come to everybody? And I know there's an element where there's a lot of projection of holograms, and a lot of our galactic guides, it's the way they've explained to me how they can just come to me pretty quickly, or they can bring me up there, is all to do with the way mathematics works, and geometry, and holograms, and how they can show you through telepathy what they see and what they do. But I have known and learned over the time to get my ego out the way just for that moment, to try and start interpreting it. And for me, and talking to Rob about getting his download this morning, it might take a few weeks to start to observe and understand what I need to do with that, to have some kind of either healing message or some technology that might be healing as well. So even if I get something new within light language, it's not for me to blast out saying I got this yesterday. It's for me to let it unfold. So I would say there's a lot of times you need to let things unfold. Do you agree, Rob, with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Try to finish things through before you pass them on, so that you're very, very sure of them. There's a really simple rule you can follow. That is, the minute you catch yourself feeling morally superior, check yourself, because then your ego has crossed the line.
Yeah.
And you need to have that conversation again. No one is morally superior.
That's
Absolutely
what I
no
think.
one. No spirit or soul, living being on this planet or any other planet is morally superior to another. We're all equal. We have equal rights, equal beliefs, equal systems. So that's the trigger for me. And I catch myself doing it, Julie. I'm sure you do too.
Absolutely. I'm not perfect.
You might have a
by
session
any means.
with a nice client, and your ego gets stroked at the end because something's gone really well. and you have a little
Yes.
moment going, oh, I'm quite good at this, I'm enjoying it. And then you have to really think, okay, it's nice to get the compliment, and I take the compliment, but leave it as a compliment. It's not more than that. I am not superior. I just happen to be in the right place at the right time, could help you through a
And
barrier.
help. Mm.
I know one day you'll probably do the same for me or for someone else. You'll pay it
Yes.
on, pay it on. That's all you and I are trying to do,
Yeah.
is get people to a place where they can pay it on.
Yeah.
We
Exactly.
aren't superior beings in any which way at
Mm.
all. We're perfectly ordinary people with perfectly ordinary lives.
Mm.
You just happen to believe there's more available to us
Yeah.
and want to help.
Yeah, because I've also noticed people who in a teacher's position, let's say, I love saying teacher, that's the nice, people
Yeah.
can teach me, that's a nice way. But I've also noticed those teachers might feel that their particular student can't give them any lessons, that they can't learn anything from them. And I have found personally, when I get my ego kind of out the way,
Yeah.
I mean, look at me and Rob, I think, there's just some amazing things that I can learn from anyone. I don't care whether they've been a student
Yeah.
or anyone. I'm going to go as far as very quickly just to say, this has been shown to me very recently in children as well. When I've spoken to another spiritual friend of mine, beautiful friend Lisa, who is dealing with things like this, and or just observing it in other children, is that I have seen on other planets where we completely respect children, and we don't even call them children. There is no words like that on these other planets, on these higher being planets. But where we allow children to express themselves. So equally, we would ask them to share how they feel about things, what they're learning, rather than, I'm going to say, this suppression of teaching with it, and it comes into adulthood. And this is why I need to express that not only is it for children, it's how we then are conditioned into adulthood. If I'm the teacher, I'm the one teaching, and I can't learn from you, and I can't learn from everything else. And my guides have shown me so many times when I've gone into other people's lives. So when I was looking at these, whatever they were, younger beings, can't call them children, and we had guardians looking after them, and they were, there was nothing to do with qualifications. It was different guardians showing them how, their experience and some skills they'd acquired about, working with oneness with nature and some other aspects of things that they've got it sorted in these other dimensions, and we could take, we could have a lesson, so for me that was a huge lovely lesson, but I was working with a client of mine, and so in so many ways, on so many levels, it's just beautiful to learn that if we don't put these limitations of our ego, that I am the big I am, which is not quite the same as I am, like everybody else is the oneness. So it really does. It feels like a frustration, but I hope it isn't for me. I think I've got to get over that. That there are people around who really feel like they need to be in this competition, and I need to be ahead of everybody else. And yes, you can be, there is that element as well. Fan line, you can be 10 steps ahead of somebody else, but in a good way, so that you can help somebody. That has been always the case, not 10 steps ahead, so that I can be this, big, this superior being to you. Um,
Mm.
I've got the other end of the extreme I was telling you earlier, Rob, is that many, many years ago, so I feel like I can say this now, it was I'm actually in fear of how many years ago it was. That's the worst fear I get at the minute. In my 20s, so a couple of years ago, when somebody they were very vulnerable. I could feel that they would be somebody who their poor ego could either be knocked or whatever, and they joined. They became a born again Christian. So I'm not knocking any religion; it's just what it happened to be. And even though then I didn't think of myself as spiritual, I didn't know any of these things. Then I was just totally living in a 3D world, office based, worked on computers, IT, etc. And this person who worked in the same office as me I don't even know how we got onto the conversation, but basically blurted out what they'd been told. And so they didn't have this discernment in them, but basically said to me, Julie, you're not a born again Christian. And so when you die, you will go to hell. Thank you very much for that. Cheers. And you think, luckily I didn't take that on board. What is hell, and we could go into that forever, but how, can you see how, us with working into our heart space, can you see how icky that feels? And there are still people today, working like that. And for me, I don't know about Rob, that's why I want to share things on the podcast about the oneness, about, how we just, look into our own, that we are all those superior beings. We're all, I'm going to say, going to be superhuman, but we are well on the way. And if you look into your future, you are that superhuman now. And so, this is also about allowing ourselves to sort of heal some of the ego aspects of ourselves that are still creating the separation, which then comes into this spiritual, it feeds this spiritual ego work that, and the discussion that we want, that we've been having today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, hand on heart, I would say I learn more in a session with a client than the client learns. And that's
yes,
one of the
I
great
do.
joys of doing this work. You
Marvelous.
just learn and you learn and you learn.
Yeah.
And it's really, really stunning. Yeah. And when the client learns as well, or develops, or has a reality check, or whatever it is, it's wonderful to see. But I'm also going, gosh, I didn't realize that. I
Mm,
need to look at that. I need to
mm,
explore this. Wow, that's a really valid point. So we're both learning, which I guess
yes,
all good education is about in a way, isn't it? But it
exactly.
is nice. Yeah.
It should
And
be,
you know that
exactly.
sort of the spiritual bullying that you talked about there, would be told you're
Mm,
going to hell and that's tough luck for you.
mm,
That's common in the alternative spiritual world as well,
it is,
where
yes.
you don't follow what I'm telling you, you don't measure up to my level, then sorry for you, but you're not coming with us. And that is
It's
the
just
biggest lot of nonsense there
ridiculous.
is.
Just
Absolute,
ridiculous.
absolute
Yeah.
rubbish. And if you have felt that, if you're listening to this and you've ever felt that, please don't take it seriously.
Mm.
Really, it's not about that at all. Listen to our podcast, please, he says, putting his ego aside for a moment, and just try to discern what we're talking about and then evaluate it for yourself
Yes.
and just see how you feel about it. Have a little moment and just think. And I hope that you will agree that the only way forward is through your own authentic self,
Mm.
not in anything anybody else can ever tell you.
Mm.
People can help you, can guide you, can lead you, but they can't tell you who
Yes.
you are or what you should be.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for you.
Mm.
So yeah, enjoy that process.
Yeah. I mean, it comes
And when you have
nicely.
to,
Yeah. Sorry, Rob.
yeah, no, it's all right. Grapple with your ego if you need to, but don't make a meal of it.
Mm. Yeah.
Don't let it become any great dividing factor in you achieving your own ascension, because it's there to help you, not hold you back.
Mm.
Just
Yeah.
get the balance right.
Mm.
All we keep saying this, Julie. It's simple, yeah, and we overcomplicate it. We've probably overcomplicated it by talking
Oh,
for half an
yeah.
hour about it,
Yes.
and people will be listening,
Yes.
going, "What the heck?" But ultimately, it is just about listening to yourself,
Yeah.
finding your truth for yourself. There you
Yeah.
go.
And that's what I was going to say. What a nice ending is the thing that me and Rob do keep saying and stressing, that we feel that, we do need to teach you, is just go within. However that feels to you. And if you're not quite, if you wanted to know the hows, listen to our podcasts and work with us, and listen to other people. Anybody who talks to you about going within, that's the bit we can't stress enough, because when you go within, you're finding out all the things about yourself and you're finding out all the things about your own guides and what they can show you. That's the bit that's truly truly beautiful, and helps you find your own truth, your own sovereignty, you know, the authenticity that you are. That is what we feel is the way we go. And you know, we see many people sharing the same information as us as we grow, and we know that as we've both worked within within, it is the hardest bit. You know, many people will say, how do you do it? It's just because we're in, you know, we've been so conditioned to look at the external, and that is it. That's what simple is. You know, it's almost like stop all the old-fashioned teaching and come, you know, create the new teaching, and teaching yourself of just clearing yourself, going within, clearing a bit more, understanding a bit more from the guides. Clear, you know, the guides you work with will show you how to clean when you know, if you haven't already, if you start working with your guides. Absolutely lovely. So yes, we will end it there by saying yes, go within. And hope you've
Lovely.
understood what we mean.
And if you
So
have, just
yes,
take 5 minutes after this and just have a think.
exactly.
Go within and just have a think.
Yeah,
That's all. Just 5 minutes.
yeah,
And maybe
exactly.
tell us what you find.
Mhm. Lovely, fantastic. Hope you've enjoyed this and got some, you know, words of wisdom from us out. And we will see you all next week. And you know, you'll be able to hear us or watch us, whatever, you know, from whatever platform we put this on. Thank you, and see you next week.
Bye now.